The very first demigod, Marika, was not born into divinity, but ascended to it, fundamentally altering the lands between's cosmic order, and in doing so she set in motion a chain of events that would fracture an entire world, birth a pantheon of godlike beings locked in eternal conflict, and leave countless souls wandering a shattered realm where ambition, betrayal, and the hunger for power would consume everything in their path. What began as one woman's transformation into a goddess became the foundation for an age of gold. A dynasty of demigods, each bearing fragments of divine power, and ultimately, a cataclysm so profound that the very fabric of reality would splinter under the weight of their warring ambitions. The demigods of Elden Ring are not merely bosses to be defeated or obstacles in a player's journey. They are the architects and victims of a cosmic tragedy, each one a thread in a tapestry woven from divine mandate, forbidden love, sibling rivalry, and the corrupting influence of power itself. These beings, born from the union of gods and mortals, from secret liaisons and political marriages, from curses and blessings alike, each carry within them a piece of the Elden Ring, the very source of order in the world, and each believes themselves the rightful heir to a throne that may no longer exist. Their stories span millennia, from the ancient wars that forged the Golden Order to the night a conspiracy shattered the illusion of divine perfection, from the moment ambition turned brother against sister and child against parent, to the endless stalemate that followed when none could claim ultimate victory. Some were born cursed, their bodies twisted by forces beyond their control, while others were blessed with beauty and strength, only to watch it curdle into madness and rot. Some sought to preserve their mother's vision of a perfect world, while others rebelled against it, embracing forbidden knowledge, outer gods, and powers that the Golden Order deemed heretical. Some were warriors who carved their legends in blood across battlefields where giants fell and dragons bowed, while others were scholars and sorcerers who sought to rewrite the very laws of existence. Some loved deeply and were destroyed by that love, while others knew only the cold calculus of power and the bitter taste of betrayal. Each demigod's fate is inseparable from the others, their lives intertwined in ways both obvious and hidden, their choices rippling outward to reshape the world again and again until the lands between became a monument to their collective failure, a realm frozen in the moment of its own destruction, waiting for an outsider to either restore what was lost or burn away what remains. To understand who these demigods are, why they fight, what they have lost and what they still cling to, you must understand not just their individual stories, but the grand architecture of divine politics, cosmic horror, and family dysfunction that binds them together. You must understand how a goddess who remade the world in her image could not control the children she brought into it, how the very power she distributed among them became the instrument of her undoing, how love and duty became impossible to reconcile, and how the pursuit of perfection created only corruption and decay. You must understand the difference between those born of Marika's first consort, the warrior king who conquered in her name, and those born of her second, the champion who was something far stranger than he appeared. You must understand the twins born under a dark omen, the prodigy whose genius could not save him from a terrible curse, the warrior maiden who never knew defeat until rot consumed her from within, the outcast who was buried alive and emerged worshipping a power that terrified even gods, the schemer who orchestrated the greatest crime in the history of the Golden Order, and the broken remnants of those who were cast aside forgotten, or transformed into something no longer recognizable as the beings they once were. You must understand that when the Elden Ring shattered, it was not a natural disaster, but a deliberate act born from grief, rage, and the realization that the perfect order Marika had built was a lie, and that the war that followed the shattering was not merely a conflict over territory or resources, but a battle for the very concept of what the world should be, with each demigod offering a different vision, each one convinced that only they possessed the wisdom and strength to rule. You must understand that the stalemate that followed was not peace, but a slow death, a world locked in perpetual twilight, where demigods festered in their strongholds, their power keeping them alive long past the point where death would have been a mercy, their minds decaying as their bodies clung to existence, their original purposes forgotten or corrupted beyond recognition. You must understand that the return of the tarnished, those who were exiled and stripped of grace, only to have it returned to them in the world's darkest hour, represents not a new hope, but a final judgment, a chance for the cycle to either renew itself or end forever. The demigods you will encounter are not the beings they once were. They are echoes of former glory, shadows of divine potential, monsters wearing the faces of gods, and yet within each of them remains some fragment of who they were, some memory of purpose or love or ambition that makes their fall all the more tragic. Some will speak to you with the eloquence of philosophers and poets, their words revealing depth of thought and feeling that make the necessity of their defeat almost unbearable, while others have devolved into pure instinct and hunger, their humanity or divinity stripped away until only the beast remains. Some rule over kingdoms of rot and scarlet decay, their very presence a blight upon the land, while others sit alone in crumbling castles, surrounded by the corpses of their followers, waiting for a death that their divine blood will not permit. Some have made pacts with entities from beyond the stars, trading their sanity and their souls for power that even other demigods fear, while others cling desperately to the old ways, trying to preserve a golden order that collapsed long ago. Some have been so thoroughly defeated by circumstance that they exist now only as fragments, their consciousness scattered, their bodies broken, their stories told only through the items they left behind and the whispers of those who remember. To understand every Elden Ring demigod is to understand a family tree that doubles as a cosmic horror story where nearly every branch leads to madness, death, or transformation into something that should not exist, where the bonds of blood are both the source of their power and the chains that drag them down, where love between parent and child, between siblings, between consorts, is always complicated by divine mandate, political necessity, and the terrible burden of immortality. It is to understand that Marika, the goddess who began it all, was herself divided, literally and metaphorically, her identity fractured in ways that would have profound implications for every child she bore, every in the ancient past, long before the Erdtree cast its golden light across the lands between. The world existed in a state of primordial chaos and boundless potential. This was the age of the Crucible, a time so distant that even the oldest legends struggle to capture its true nature. The Crucible itself was not a place or a thing in any conventional sense, but rather a fundamental state of existence, a melting pot where all life intermingled without distinction or separation. In this primordial era, the boundaries between different forms of life were fluid and permeable. Creatures bore aspects that would later be considered monstrous or aberrant, with horns, wings, tails, and scales appearing in combinations that defied categorization. This was not corruption or mutation as we might understand it today, but the natural expression of life's infinite variety before the establishment of rigid order and hierarchy. The crucible was pure vitality, raw and unrefined. From its essence emerged beings of tremendous power and bizarre form, entities that would later be remembered as omens of chaos by those who came to worship's order and purity. The energy of the crucible manifested in ways both beautiful and terrible. Horns that sprouted from flesh were not seen as afflictions, but as blessings, physical proof of connection to the primordial source of all life. The crucible knights, who would emerge in later ages, would harness these ancient powers through their incantations, channeling the primal aspects of tail sweeps and breath attacks that echoed this formative period of creation. Rising from this primordial soup of existence stood the great tree, a massive arboreal entity that served as a focal point for life in the lands between. This was not yet the Erd tree, though the two would become conflated in later histories and myths. The great tree was organic in a way that its successor would never quite replicate, a living monument to the crucible's generative power. Its roots delved deep into the earth, drawing sustenance from the very essence of the world, while its branches reached toward the heavens, as if seeking something beyond the material realm. The great tree did not impose order or demand worship. It simply existed, a symbol of life's persistence and growth, a landmark around which the early inhabitants of the lands between oriented their understanding of the world. In this primordial age, the lands between were not empty of civilization or power. Ancient dragons dominated the realm, creatures of stone and lightning, whose scales were harder than any metal, and whose breath could reduce mountains to rubble. These were not mere beasts, but intelligent, sophisticated beings with their own culture, hierarchy, and spiritual beliefs. At the apex of dragon society sat Placidusax, the Dragon Lord, a being of such immense power that he possessed not one, but multiple heads, each capable of independent thought, yet unified in purpose. Placidusax was more than a king or a warlord. He held the title of Elden Lord, though this was an Elden Lord of a different order entirely, serving not the greater will, but another god whose identity has been lost to the erosion of time. The dragons worshipped this forgotten god with a devotion that shaped the very structure of their society. Farum Azula, the great temple city that floated among the storm clouds, served as both capital and cathedral, a place where the temporal and spiritual powers of dragonkind merged into a single expression of their civilization's might. Placidusax waited there in patient vigil, his god having fled or vanished, leaving the Dragon Lord in a state of eternal anticipation. The ancient dragons commanded lightning not through crude manipulation, but through a fundamental understanding of its nature. Red lightning, the original form of the bolt, crackled through the skies of Farum Azula, a power that predated the golden lightning that would come to be associated with the Erd Tree's champions. Yet even in this age of dragon supremacy, forces beyond the material world watched and waited. The outer gods, entities existing in dimensions beyond normal comprehension, turned their attention toward the lands between. These were not gods in any traditional sense, not beings that demanded temples or prayer, though they would receive both in time. They were more akin to fundamental forces of reality, cosmic principles given something approaching consciousness and will. Each outer god represented a different aspect of existence, a different path that reality might take, and each sought to impose its particular vision upon the world. Among these outer gods was the formless mother, an entity associated with blood, wounds, and a twisted form of communion through pain. The formless mother did not rule through domination, but through seduction, offering power to those willing to embrace agony and bloodshed as sacraments. She whispered across the void, seeking those who might serve as her vessels or champions in the material world. Her influence was subtle at first, a corruption that spread through blood and battle, planting seeds that would not fully flower until ages hence, when her accursed blood would flow through the veins of those who called themselves her dynasty. But it was another outer god whose intervention would reshape the lands between entirely. The greater will, a cosmic force of order and causality, cast its gaze upon the world and found it wanting. Where the crucible offered chaotic potential and the ancient dragons maintained their isolated supremacy, the greater will saw opportunity for something grander and more structured. It did not simply wish to influence the world, but to fundamentally restructure it according to principles of hierarchy, order, and purpose. To accomplish this transformation, the greater will required an agent, a vessel through whom its power could be channeled and its vision implemented. The greater will chose Marika, and in that choice, the entire trajectory of history pivoted. Marika's origins remain shrouded in mystery, her life before ascension to godhood a subject of speculation and fragmentary evidence. What is known is that she was of the Numen, a race of beings who came from beyond the lands between, people whose lifespans stretched far beyond those of ordinary humans. The greater will did not select Marika arbitrarily. She possessed qualities that made her suitable as a vessel, an ambition and will that could bear the weight of divinity without being immediately consumed by it. The greater will sent the Elden Beast, a living incarnation of order itself, which became the Elden Ring and took residence within Marika's body, transforming her from a mortal, however long-lived, into something far greater. Marika became a god, but not in the sense of achieving enlightenment or transcendence. She became a vessel, a living conduit through which the greater will's power flowed into the world. The Elden Ring, now housed within her flesh, was both a source of tremendous power and a burden, a responsibility that could never be set aside. With the Elden Ring came the Golden Order, a new system of laws that would govern not just society, but reality itself. The Golden Order was not merely a religion or philosophy, but a fundamental restructuring of how the world operated, establishing hierarchies and categories, defining what was blessed and what was cursed, what was natural and what was aberrant. To establish this new order required more than divine power. It required conquest, the systematic subjugation of those who clung to the old ways. Marika understood this necessity and chose as her consort Godfrey, a warrior of unmatched prowess whose strength was legendary even before his elevation. Godfrey became the first Elden Lord, a title that carried both honor and responsibility. Unlike Placidus Sax, who had been Elden Lord to a vanished god, Godfrey would serve a god who was very much present and very much determined to reshape the world according to her vision. The young Godwyn, eldest son of Queen Marika and Lord Godfrey, would prove to be everything his parents hoped for in an heir. Where his father excelled in conquest through raw martial might, Godwyn possessed a charisma and diplomatic wisdom that would reshape the political landscape of the lands between. As he came of age during the ongoing conflict with the ancient dragons, Godwin observed the endless cycle of violence between his mother's golden order and the dragon kin who had ruled the skies since time immemorial. The war had already claimed countless lives on both sides, and the ancient dragons, though diminished from their peak, remained formidable adversaries whose mastery of lightning and storm made them nearly impossible to fully subdue. Godwin recognized what his mother's zealotry and his father's warrior spirit could not. That true strength lay not in the complete annihilation of one's enemies, but in the wisdom to transform enemies into allies. The turning point came when Godwin approached Fortisax, one of the mightiest of the ancient dragons, with an offer of friendship rather than a challenge of combat. This act of unprecedented diplomacy shocked both the Golden Order's faithful and the Dragonkin themselves. Fortisax, ancient beyond measure and weary of endless bloodshed, saw in the young demigod a sincerity that had been absent from every previous interaction with Marika's forces. The dragon accepted Godwin's friendship, and through this bond, a formal peace was brokered between the ancient dragons and the Golden Order. This was not a peace born of surrender or subjugation, but of mutual respect and alliance. The dragons would be welcomed into the Golden Order's pantheon, their lightning-based incantations integrated into the teachings of the faithful, and in return, the dragons would cease their attacks on the Golden Order's expansion. Godwin's achievement earned him the epithet, the Golden, a title that spoke not just to his divine heritage, but to the radiant diplomatic triumph he had accomplished where his parents' military campaigns had failed. Yet even as Godwin basked in glory and secured his place as the most beloved of Marika's children, his two younger brothers faced a far darker fate. Morgott and Mog, born as twins to Marika and Godfrey, emerged into the world bearing the curse of the Omen. Omens were beings born with grotesque horns and twisted features, their bodies marked by the lingering influence of the crucible, that primordial essence from which all life had once sprung. In the age before the Erdtree's dominance, when the crucible's power flowed freely through the world, such features might have been celebrated as signs of vitality and connection to the primal source. But under the Golden Order's rigid doctrine, which prized purity and conformity to Marika's vision of perfection, the crucible's chaotic influence was seen as an abomination to be suppressed. Omens were considered cursed, their very existence a stain upon the ordered beauty the Golden Order sought to impose upon reality. For common omens, those born to ordinary families throughout the lands between, the fate was cruel but straightforward. Their horns would be excised in brutal rituals, the stumps cauterized and bound, and they would live as outcasts, shunned by society and marked forever by their mutilation. But Morgott and Mog were not common omens. They were the sons of Queen Marika herself, demigods whose very existence threatened to expose the hypocrisy at the heart of the Golden Order. How could Marika, the eternal vessel of the Elden Ring and architect of the age's defining ideology, have given birth to creatures that her own doctrine condemned as impure? The answer, in Marika's calculation, was simple. They could not be allowed to exist in the public eye. To kill them would risk divine retribution or expose her to accusations of weakness, but to acknowledge them would undermine everything she had built. Instead, Marika chose a third path. Morgott and Mog were cast down into the subterranean shunning grounds, the vast network of sewers and catacombs that lay beneath Lindell, the royal capital. There, in the darkness and filth, surrounded by other omens and the refuse of the Golden Order's society, the twin demigods would be imprisoned, forgotten by the world above, their existence known only to a select few who were sworn to secrecy. The psychological impact of this imprisonment on the two brothers would shape their destinies in profoundly different ways. Morgoth, despite the cruelty inflicted upon him, clung to a desperate love for the Golden Order and his mother who had rejected him. He internalized the doctrine that condemned him, believing himself truly cursed and unworthy, yet paradoxically devoted himself to protecting the very system that had cast him aside. Mog, by contrast, festered with rage and ambition in the darkness. Where Morgoth accepted his fate as just punishment for the sin of his birth, Mog rejected the Golden Order entirely, and in the depths of his imprisonment, he would eventually make contact with forces far older and more terrible than the Erd Tree, forces that promised him power and purpose beyond his mother's rigid hierarchy. With the dragons pacified and her omen sons hidden away, Marika turned her attention to the final threat to the Golden Order's supremacy, the fire giants of the mountain tops. These colossal beings, the last survivors of an ancient race, served as guardians of the Fell God, a primordial deity of flame whose power stood in direct opposition to the Erd Tree's golden light. Godfrey had defeated the fire giants in battle, slaying their chieftain and taking the giant's eye as a trophy, but Marika understood that military victory alone was insufficient. As long as the Fell God remained, the fire giant's power could never be truly extinguished. The Fell God existed as a conceptual force, a divine embodiment of destructive flame that could not be killed through conventional means. Instead, Marika employed her mastery over the metaphysical laws of the lands between to seal the Fell God within the very land it had once protected. She bound the deity's essence into the mountain tops of the giants themselves, transforming the region into a frozen prison where the Fell God's flames would burn eternally but impotently, unable to manifest in the world or aid its worshippers. The last of the fire giants was cursed to tend the flame forever, a lonely sentinel guarding the embers of his people's god, ensuring that the fire never fully died but could never again threaten the Golden Order's dominance. With every external threat neutralized or subjugated, Marika made a decision that would echo through the ages and set in motion the events that would eventually lead to the shattering itself. She banished Godfrey, her loyal consort and the first Elden Lord, along with all his tarnished warriors, from the lands between. The tarnished were those who had lost the grace of the Erd Tree, the golden light that shone in the eyes of the faithful and marked them as chosen by the Golden Order. By stripping Godfrey and his followers of their grace, Marika effectively exiled them from the only world they had ever known, casting them out beyond the fog that surrounded the lands between to wander foreign lands as masterless warriors. The reasons for this shocking betrayal remain one of the great mysteries of the age. Some scholars suggest that Marika foresaw a future need for warriors unburdened by the Golden Order's strictures, champions who could operate outside the system she had created. Others believe that Godfrey had served his purpose as a conqueror and was no longer useful in an age of consolidation and refinement. Still others whisper that Marika had grown tired of her warrior king, that she desired a different kind of consort for the next phase of her reign, one more aligned with her intellectual and sorcerous ambitions. Whatever her true motivations, the banishment of Godfrey marked the end of the Age of Conquest and the beginning of the Erd Tree's true flourishing. With no more wars to fight and no more threats to suppress, the Golden Order turned inward, focusing on cultural and theological development. The Erd Tree itself, drawing ever more power from the crucible it had supplanted, grew to dominate the skyline of the lands between, its golden boughs visible from every corner of the realm. It became not merely a symbol, but the literal center of existence, the axis around which all life in the lands between revolved, and the promise of immortality through rebirth within its roots became the defining hope of an entire civilization. With the Erd Tree established and the Elden Ring secured within Queen Marika the Eternal, the next phase of her divine reign begins in earnest during what historians of the lands between call the ancient past of Godfrey's reign. This era, stretching across generations following the genesis of the age of the Erd Tree, witnesses the Golden Order's transformation from a nascent theological framework into an absolute, militant doctrine that will tolerate no rival powers. Marika, serving as the living vessel of the Elden Ring, that collection of great runes representing the fundamental laws of reality itself, does not merely proclaim the Golden Order's supremacy. She codifies it, establishes its tenets, and demands its universal acceptance throughout the lands between. The Golden Order, as formalized during these early centuries, represents far more than a simple religion or political structure. It is a metaphysical reorganization of existence itself, a rewriting of the rules that govern life, death, and the soul. Under Marika's guidance, the Golden Order establishes principles that will define the lands between for ages to come. Death becomes a return to the Erd Tree, where souls are absorbed and eventually reborn in a grand cycle. The Erd Tree itself stands as the axis mundi, the center of all creation, its golden light a visible manifestation of grace, the guidance offered to those who serve Marika's vision. This grace appears as golden particles in the air, visible only to those blessed by the Erd Tree, pointing them toward their destined purpose within the grand design. But divine authority, no matter how absolute in its theological claims, must be enforced in the material world. The Golden Order seeks nothing less than total dominion, the elimination or subjugation of all forces that might oppose its rule. Ancient powers that predate the Erd Tree, rival faiths that worship different outer gods, creatures, and civilizations that refuse to bend the knee to Marika's supremacy, all must be brought to heel or destroyed. This is not merely conquest for territory or resources. It is ideological warfare, the systematic eradication of alternative cosmologies that might challenge the Golden Order's claim to represent the one true natural law of the universe. Among these rival powers, few pose as significant a threat as the fire giants, an ancient race inhabiting the frozen peaks of the mountaintops of the giants, the highest and most remote region in all the lands between. These giants, as towering beings, with skin like weathered stone and hair and beards of blazing red, are not simply large humanoids. They are the chosen people of the Fell God, an outer god of flame whose power stands in direct opposition to everything the Erd Tree represents. Where the Erd Tree offers golden light, gentle warmth, and the promise of eternal return, the Fell God offers the Fell Flame, a destructive, all-consuming fire that reduces everything it touches to ash and cinder, leaving no possibility of rebirth or renewal. The fire giants worship their god through the maintenance of a massive flame, a bonfire of such immense scale that it burns perpetually atop the highest peak of their mountain realm. This is not merely a ceremonial fire, it is a living manifestation of their god's power, a fell flame capable of burning even the Erd Tree itself should it ever be unleashed upon the lowlands. The giants serve as priests and guardians of this flame, feeding it, protecting it, and drawing upon its power to defend their homeland. Their very existence, their continued worship of the fell god, represents an ideological challenge to the Golden Order's claim of universal sovereignty. As long as the fire giants maintain their flame and their faith, they prove that alternatives to Marika's vision can survive, that the Erd Tree's light does not shine everywhere, that the Golden Order's laws are not truly absolute. Moreover, the mountaintops of the giants occupy a position of strategic importance that makes their independence intolerable to the Golden Order's expansion. The region sits at the northern extreme of the lands between, its peaks so high that they pierce the clouds themselves. Control of this territory would complete the Golden Order's geographical dominion, leaving no corner of the known world outside Marika's reach. The presence of a hostile, powerful civilization in such a commanding position represents both a practical military threat and a symbolic affront to the Golden Order's pretensions of totality. To eliminate this threat, Marika turns to her consort and champion, Godfrey, the first Elden Lord. Godfrey represents the martial aspect of the Golden Order's power, the iron fist within the golden glove. Where Marika embodies divine authority and metaphysical supremacy, Godfrey embodies physical might and tactical genius. He is described in the sparse historical records as a peerless warrior, a man of such extraordinary combat prowess that he has never known defeat in personal battle. But Godfrey is more than a mere fighter. He is a general, a strategist, a leader capable of commanding vast armies and coordinating complex military campaigns across difficult terrain. Godfrey's appearance, as depicted in the few surviving images and described in fragmentary accounts, reflects his dual nature as both noble lord and savage warrior. He is massive, broad-shouldered, with a mane of wild hair that suggests barely contained ferocity. Yet he carries himself with regal bearing, adorned in golden armor that marks him as Marika's chosen consort. Most notably, upon his back rides Serosh, the aged lord of beasts, a massive lion-like creature that has grafted itself to Godfrey's body. Serosh is not a pet or a mount in the traditional sense. The beast serves as a living seal, a constant weight that restrains Godfrey's true nature, his overwhelming bloodlust and savage joy in battle. With Serosh upon his back, Godfrey can function as a civilized lord, a ruler, and administrator. But should Serosh be removed, Godfrey's true self, the warrior known as Huara Lu, would emerge in all its terrible glory. Marika commands Godfrey to lead the Golden Order's armies north, to wage war upon the fire giants, and secure the mountaintops for the Erd Tree. Godfrey accepts this charge without hesitation, assembling a massive expeditionary force drawn from across the lands between. These armies include not only human warriors blessed with grace, but also trolls, distant cousins of the giants who have already submitted to the Golden Order's rule, and various other creatures and soldiers loyal to Marika's cause. The logistics of moving such a force into the frozen peaks, supplying them through brutal mountain winters, and maintaining combat readiness in such hostile conditions, speak to Godfrey's capabilities as a military commander. The campaign against the fire giants unfolds over years, perhaps even decades. This is not a single decisive battle, but a prolonged, grinding war of attrition fought across treacherous mountain terrain. The fire giants, though vastly outnumbered, possess significant advantages. They know every pass, every valley, every defensive position in their homeland. Their massive size and strength make each individual giant worth dozens of human soldiers in combat. Most importantly, they wield the power of the fell flame itself, calling down torrents of fire upon the Golden Order's advancing forces, turning the snow covered peaks into infernos that consume entire battalions. Godfrey's forces suffer terrible casualties during the early phases of the campaign. The mountaintops of the giants proved to be a graveyard for the Golden Order's armies, with soldiers freezing in the brutal cold or burning in the giants' flames. The supply lines stretch thin across hundreds of miles of hostile territory. Avalanches, deliberately triggered by the giants, bury entire companies beneath tons of snow and ice. The giants themselves fight with desperate ferocity, knowing that defeat means not merely death, but the extinction of their entire people and the desecration of their sacred flame. But Godfrey proves relentless, adapting his tactics to the terrain and the enemy. He establishes fortified positions at key strategic points, creating a network of strongholds that allow his forces to maintain their presence in the mountains even through the worst winters. He employs the trolls in his army to counter the giants' size advantage, pitting massive creatures against one another in brutal close combat. He studies the patterns of the giants' flame attacks, learning to predict and avoid the worst of their fire. Most crucially, he systematically hunts down and eliminates the fire giants one by one, reducing their numbers through a combination of direct assault and strategic isolation. The war reaches its climax when Godfrey personally confronts the last remaining fire giant, the final survivor of his entire race. This giant, towering even among his own kind, makes his final stand in defense of the sacred flame. The battle between Godfrey and this last giant becomes the stuff of legend, a clash of titans fought across the highest peaks of the mountaintops. The giant calls upon the full power of the fell flame, summoning infernos that melt the very stone of the mountains. Godfrey, in turn, displays the full extent of his martial prowess, wielding his massive axe with impossible speed and precision, weathering blows that would shatter castle walls, pressing forward with inexorable determination. In the end, Godfrey emerges victorious, but he does not kill the last fire giant. Instead, following Marika's specific instructions, he defeats the giant and leaves him alive, cursed to serve as a living prison. The fell god itself, the outer god of flame that the giants worshipped, is sealed within this last survivor, bound by powerful incantations and divine mandate. The giant is condemned to tend the flame in isolation, unable to die, unable to use the flame's power, reduced to a mere custodian of the very force he once wielded as a weapon. This fate represents a cruelty beyond simple execution, transforming the last representative of an entire civilization into a living monument to his people's defeat. The fell flame itself, that power antithetical to everything the Erd tree represents, is contained but critically not extinguished. Marika, for reasons that will only become clear much later in the timeline, chooses to preserve the flame rather than destroy it utterly. Perhaps she recognizes that the flame cannot truly be destroyed, that attempting to extinguish it completely would risk unleashing it in uncontrolled ways. Perhaps she foresees a future need for its power. Or perhaps she simply wishes to maintain the last fire giant's torment, ensuring that he must watch over the flame for eternity, knowing he can never use it to avenge his people. Whatever her reasoning, the decision to preserve the fell flame will have profound consequences for the future of the lands between. With the defeat of the fire giants, Godfrey's purpose as Marika's warrior reaches its fulfillment. He has quelled the enemies of the Erd Tree, eliminated the major threats to the Golden Order's dominion, and secured the lands between from border to border. The wars of conquest are over. The age of expansion has ended. The Golden Order now rules supreme, with no remaining rivals capable of challenging its authority. For a warrior of Godfrey's nature, for a man whose entire identity centers on battle and conquest, this represents not triumph, but tragedy. There are no more wars to fight, no more enemies to defeat, no more purpose to his existence. Marika recognizes the danger this poses. Godfrey is not a man who can simply retire to peaceful administration. His nature, barely restrained by Siraj even at the best of times, is fundamentally that of a warrior who lives for battle. With no external enemies to fight, Godfrey's lust for conflict might turn inward, threatening the stability of the realm Marika has worked so hard to establish. A warrior without a war is a dangerous thing, especially when that warrior commands the loyalty of vast armies and possesses the strength to challenge even demigods. In a decision that will echo through the ages, Marika strips Godfrey of his grace. The golden light fades from his eyes, the guidance of the Erd Tree withdraws from his soul, and he becomes the first tarnished, the first to lose the blessing that marks one as part of the Golden Order. This is not merely a symbolic gesture or a political maneuver. The loss of grace represents a fundamental severing from the metaphysical structure of the Golden Order itself. Without grace, Godfrey can no longer see the golden guidance that points the blessed toward their purpose. He is cut off from the Erd Tree's light, excluded from the cycle of death and rebirth that the Golden Order promises to its faithful. But Marika does not simply cast Godfrey aside. She banishes him from the lands between entirely, sending him and his most loyal warriors beyond the fog into the unknown lands that lie outside the Erd Tree's influence. This banishment comes with a purpose, a final command that gives these newly made tarnished a reason to continue existing. They are to wage war in these distant lands, to fight and struggle, and eventually die far from the Erd Tree's light. Marika tells them that they will walk a long, hard road bathed in blood, and that they should grow strong in the crucible of endless battle. The creation of the tarnished, this banishment of Godfrey and his warriors, represents one of Marika's most enigmatic decisions. On the surface, it appears to be a simple solution to a political problem, a way to remove a potential threat while maintaining the appearance of honor and purpose. But as with the preservation of the fell flame, there are hints that Marika's thinking extends far beyond the immediate situation. She is not merely disposing of inconvenient warriors. She is planting seeds for a future harvest, creating a population of battle-hardened fighters who exist outside the Golden Order's structure, but who might one day be called upon to return. As Godfrey and his warriors march beyond the fog, their golden eyes now dim and lifeless, an era ends. The age of conquest concludes. The lands between enter a period of relative peace under the Golden Order's absolute rule, but the seeds of future conflict have been sown. The fell flame still burns in the mountaintops, guarded by its cursed keeper. The tarnished wander in distant lands, growing strong through endless battle, waiting for a call that may never come. And Marika herself, having eliminated external threats and removed her warrior consort, turns her attention to consolidating power and managing the internal dynamics of her divine family, setting the stage for the conflicts that will eventually tear the Golden Order apart from within. Following the decisive victory against the fire giants, a new chapter unfolded in the annals of the lands between, ushering in an era we can broadly classify as Radagon's rise, firmly rooted in the ancient past. It was during this period that Queen Marika the Eternal, now firmly established as the sovereign deity of the Golden Order, made a rather surprising, yet ultimately pivotal decision. She took Radagon as her second consort. This union was, in fact, far more complex and intrinsically linked than anyone in the lands between, save for perhaps Marika herself, could have possibly comprehended at the time. For Radagon, as we shall later understand, was not merely a champion, a hero, or even a devout follower of the Golden Order. He was, in a profound and esoteric sense, Marika's other half, a physical manifestation of her own being, a secret kept hidden from all but the highest echelons of cosmic understanding. This duality, this intrinsic connection, would cast a long and intricate shadow over the events that followed, shaping the very fabric of the world. However, Radagon's ascension to consort of the reigning goddess was not his first foray into matrimony. Prior to his union with Marika, Radagon had been wed to Renala, the queen of the full moon, a figure of immense power and prestige within the Carian royal family. Renala was not merely a monarch, she was a master sorceress, head of the Carian royal family, and the undisputed leader of the Raya Lucarian Academy, the foremost institution of glintstone sorcery in all of the lands between. Their marriage, a strategic alliance perhaps, or perhaps a genuine affection, had produced 3 remarkable children, each destined to leave an indelible mark on the history of the lands between. First, there was Rykard, who would later become the Lord of Blasphemy, a figure of immense and terrifying power, consumed by a forbidden hunger. Then came Radon, the Star Scourge, a warrior of unparalleled might, whose ambition was to halt the very movement of the stars themselves. And finally, Rani, the Lunar Princess, a demigod of profound mystery and tragic destiny, whose fate would become inextricably linked with the very shattering of the Elden Ring. These 3 offspring, born of the union between Radagon and Renala, represented a potent confluence of Golden Order influence and ancient Carian magic, a blend that would manifest in diverse and often destructive ways. The relationship between Radagon and Renala, however, was not one of uninterrupted harmony. Indeed, their bond was forged and tested within the crucible of a brutal conflict known as the Lernian Wars. Radagon, a staunch champion of the Golden Order and a devout believer in its tenets, led the formidable forces of Leyndell, the Golden Capital, against the Carian royal family. These wars were not mere skirmishes. They were protracted and devastating conflicts fought across the shimmering lakes and verdant landscapes of Liurnia of the Lakes, a region renowned for its arcane power and the seat of the Carian dynasty. The Golden Order, with its emphasis on faith, fundamentalism, and the eradication of perceived heresies, sought to extend its dominion and influence over the Carian royal family, whose reliance on glintstone sorcery and ancient lunar worship was seen by some as an affront to the Golden Order's singular truth. The Liurnian Wars, therefore, were a clash of ideologies as much as they were a clash of arms. On one side stood the might of the Golden Order, spearheaded by Radagon, a warrior of immense skill and unwavering conviction. On the other, the Carian royal family, led by none other than Renala herself, a sorceress of unimaginable power, whose mastery over glintstone magic allowed her to command the very forces of the cosmos. The conflict raged for an indeterminate but significant period, with both sides committing vast resources and suffering immense losses. The strategic importance of Liurnia, with its rich magical traditions and its proximity to the Erd Tree's influence, made it a highly contested territory. Battles were fought across the Academy's grounds, within the shadowed groves of the Moonlight Altar, and along the winding paths that snaked through the region. The Carian Knights, renowned for their skill with both blade and spell, fiercely defended their ancestral lands and their unique magical heritage against the encroaching Golden Order legions. Renala, in particular, proved to be a formidable adversary, her command of the full moon's power capable of turning the tide of even the most desperate engagements. Her devotion to her family and her kingdom was absolute, and she rallied her forces with a fierce determination born of both love and conviction. Ultimately, despite the ferocity of the fighting and the immense sacrifices made on both sides, the conflict between Radagon and Renala in the Liurnian Wars ended not in a decisive victory for either party, but in a stalemate. Neither the Golden Order nor the Carian royal family was able to achieve total conquest or subjugation of the other. The power of Renala's sorcery, coupled with the resilience of the Carian defenses, proved too great for Radagon's forces to overcome completely. Conversely, the sheer might and unwavering conviction of the Golden Order under Radagon's leadership prevented the Carian royal family from pushing back the Landel forces entirely. This protracted and bloody stalemate, a testament to the equal yet opposing strengths of the two factions, forced a cessation of hostilities, an uneasy truce born of mutual exhaustion, and the realization that further bloodshed would only lead to more fruitless devastation. It was in the aftermath of this stalemate, with the echoes of war still lingering over the lakes of Liurnia, that Radagon made his fateful decision. He departed from Renala and the Corian royal family, leaving behind his former life and his children to answer the call of Queen Marika and become her consort. This was not a sudden, impulsive act, but a calculated move, driven by his inherent connection to Marika and the unfolding destiny of the Golden Order. His departure, however, was not without a gesture of profound significance. As a parting gift, a symbol of their shared past, and perhaps a lingering respect, Radagon bestowed upon Renala an amber egg. This was no ordinary trinket. Within its translucent depths resided a great rune, one of the powerful fragments of the shattered Elden Ring, or at least a precursor to one, imbued with immense cosmic energy. This gift, a testament to their complex bond, served as both a poignant farewell and a lasting reminder of their intertwined fates. It was a recognition of Renala's power, her status, and perhaps a silent acknowledgement of the love that once existed between them, even as their paths diverged. For Renala, Radagon's departure was a devastating blow. The Queen, once a beacon of strength and arcane power, was left heartbroken and profoundly wounded by the abandonment. The weight of his absence, coupled with the cessation of the wars and the lingering sorrow of a love lost, led her to retreat. She withdrew from the public eye, from the responsibilities of her kingdom, and from the vibrant life she once led, seeking solace and refuge within the hallowed halls of the Grand Library of Raya Lucarian Academy. This was not merely a physical retreat. It was a profound, emotional, and mental withdrawal. Surrounded by the vast repository of knowledge and the silent wisdom of countless tomes, Renala became a recluse, her once bright spirit dimmed by grief. She cradled the amber egg, a constant reminder of Radagon, and spent her days in quiet contemplation, her focus turning inward, her once formidable power now channeled into a singular, unwavering devotion to the memory of her lost love and the children they shared. Her mind, once sharp and focused, became increasingly consumed by the past, her reality shifting as she clung to the echoes of what once was. Despite Renala's profound grief and withdrawal, her three children, Rykard, Radan, and Rani, remained under her care within the Carian royal family. Though their father had departed, their mother, in her own unique and melancholic way, continued to nurture them, albeit from within the confines of her self imposed exile. The children, now without their father's direct guidance, would each embark on their own distinct and often tragic journeys, their inherent demigod power and unique heritage shaping their destinies in profound ways. Rykard, with his insatiable curiosity and ambition, would delve into forbidden knowledge. Radon, driven by a desire to emulate his father's martial prowess, would become a legendary warrior. And Rani, perhaps the most enigmatic of the three, would begin to chart a course that would defy even the dictates of the Golden Order itself. Even with Radagon's departure and Renala's retreat, the Carian royal family, though undoubtedly diminished by the loss of their king and the emotional incapacitation of their queen, continued to hold significant power and influence in Liurnia. The foundations of their magical traditions, their academic prowess, and their strategic location ensured that they remained a formidable force within the lands between. The Raya Lucarian Academy, with its unparalleled mastery of glintstone sorcery, continued to be a center of learning and arcane power, attracting scholars and practitioners from across the realm. The Carian Knights, though no longer directly engaged in open warfare with the Golden Order, maintained their martial traditions and guarded their ancestral lands. The legacy of the Carian royal family, though scarred by the Liurnian Wars and the departure of Radagon, endured, a testament to their deep roots in the history and magic of the lands between. Their story, however, was far from over. Indeed, it was only just beginning to unfold in the grand tapestry of the Elden Ring's narrative. Following the establishment of Marika's second consort and the Carian royal family, our timeline shifts to a period within the ancient past known as the Golden Lineage, a pivotal era marked by profound births and burgeoning curses. It is here, in the grand tapestry of the lands between, that we witness a truly extraordinary, and some would say paradoxical event: the conception of two children through the union of Queen Marika, the Eternal, and Radagon of the Golden Order. For those unfamiliar with the esoteric nature of the Erd Tree's divine lineage, it is crucial to understand that Marika and Radagon are, in essence, two halves of the same divine being, a singular entity with a fractured identity. This unique duality, however, did not preclude them from bearing offspring, a testament to the arcane power and mysterious biology of the gods in this world. Their union, therefore, represents not merely a royal marriage, but a profound cosmic event, further solidifying the Golden Lineage's claim to divine authority and setting the stage for future conflicts and tragedies. From this enigmatic coupling, two children were born, both destined to bear immense burdens. The first was Michaela, a being of astonishing grace and intellect, yet cursed with eternal childhood. This affliction, a cruel twist of fate, prevented him from aging past a juvenile state, forever trapping him in the physical form of a child. Imagine the profound psychological impact of such a curse, a mind capable of immense wisdom and foresight encased within a body that would never mature, never experience the full spectrum of adult life. This perpetual youth was not merely a cosmetic inconvenience, It was a fundamental impediment to his development and his ability to fully exert his considerable power. The Golden Order, with its rigid dogma and reliance on the greater will, proved utterly incapable of alleviating this suffering, leaving Michela to grapple with his unique predicament in isolation. Shortly after Michela's birth, his twin sister Malenia was also brought into the world, and with her came an even more devastating affliction, the scarlet rot. This insidious and incurable disease, a manifestation of an outer god's influence, slowly and relentlessly consumed her body, leaving a trail of decay and corruption in its wake. The scarlet rot was not merely a physical ailment, it was a spiritual blight, a constant reminder of the malevolent forces at play in the lands between. Its debilitating effects were profound, transforming Millennia into a figure of both immense power and tragic vulnerability. The Golden Order again offered no solace or cure, its divine protections proving utterly ineffective against the encroaching influence of this cosmic horror. The birth of these two cursed children therefore served as a stark indictment of the Golden Order's limitations and the inherent fragility of even divine beings in the face of such potent external threats. The existence of such curses, particularly the scarlet rot, brought into sharp focus the societal fear and persecution of those afflicted. To combat these perceived threats to the established order, a specialized executioner known as the Omen Killer was established. These grim figures were tasked with hunting and eliminating anyone born with curses, particularly those manifesting as omens, monstrous beings often born with horns or other physical deformities. The Omen Killer's existence highlights the brutal reality of a society that valued purity and conformity above all else, and was willing to resort to extreme measures to maintain its perceived sanctity. The fear of the unknown, of anything that deviated from the norm, fueled this persecution, creating a climate of terror for those born with unfortunate afflictions. The Omen Killer's mandate extended beyond just omens, however, encompassing any individual whose existence was deemed a threat to the Golden Order, including those touched by the scarlet rot. Their brutal efficiency served as a constant reminder of the societal intolerance and the harsh consequences of being deemed other. Witnessing his sister's agonizing struggle with the scarlet rot and burdened by his own unending childhood, Michela, driven by a profound and unwavering love for Millennia, began a desperate quest. He rejected the Golden Order's inability to help them, recognizing the limitations of its dogma and its reliance on the greater will, which seemed indifferent to their plight. Instead, Michela, a being of immense intellect and burgeoning arcane knowledge, embarked on a tireless research endeavor, seeking to understand the nature of their curses and, more importantly, to develop methods to alleviate their suffering. His dedication was absolute, a testament to the strength of his fraternal bond. He delved into forbidden knowledge, explored forgotten lore, and experimented with esoteric alchemies, all in the pursuit of a cure. This intellectual pursuit marked a significant departure from the established practices of the Golden Order, demonstrating Michela's willingness to challenge orthodoxy in the face of existential threats to his loved ones. Michela's ultimate goal was clear: to find a cure for both his eternal childhood and Millennia's devastating scarlet rot. He understood that the Golden Order, with its rigid adherence to the greater will, was simply incapable of providing the answers or the solutions they so desperately needed. The greater will, an outer god that exerts its influence through the Erd Tree and the Golden Order, seemed to have no interest in reversing the curses it had, perhaps indirectly, allowed to manifest. This realization spurred Michaela to seek alternative paths, to forge a new destiny free from the perceived limitations and indifference of the established divine order. His rejection of the Golden Order was not an act of malice, but an act of profound necessity, born from a desire to protect and heal his beloved sister. This decision would have far reaching consequences, setting him on a path that would ultimately challenge the very foundations of the lands between. It was this unwavering determination that led Michaela to embark on his most ambitious project, the creation of the Halleck tree. This massive sacred tree was intended to be a new Erd tree, a living testament to his vision of a world free from the influence of the greater will and its associated curses. The Halleck tree was not merely a botanical marvel, it was a philosophical statement, a rejection of the existing divine order and an attempt to forge a new path for the afflicted and the outcast. Michaela envisioned a sanctuary, a place where those burdened by curses, those rejected by the Golden Order, could find refuge and healing. The sheer ambition of this undertaking cannot be overstated. It was a direct challenge to the very cosmic order of the lands between, an attempt to supplant the established divine authority with a new, more benevolent power. The Halleck tree, therefore, became a symbol of hope and defiance, a beacon for those who sought liberation from their suffering. To achieve this monumental feat, Michaela employed a unique and powerful substance, unalloyed gold. This special form of gold possessed the remarkable property of warding off the influence of outer gods, making it an invaluable tool in his quest to create a truly independent and protective haven. Michaela meticulously imbued the Halleck tree with the properties of unalloyed gold, ensuring that its very essence would be resistant to the insidious manipulations of external divine entities. This was a crucial step in his plan, as it guaranteed the Halleck tree's immunity from the very forces that had cursed him and his sister. The unalloyed gold acted as a spiritual shield, creating a sanctuary where the greater will's influence, and indeed the influence of the outer god of rot, would be neutralized. This act demonstrated Michaela's profound understanding of the metaphysical forces at play in the lands between, and his ingenuity in harnessing them for his benevolent purposes. As Michaela poured his efforts into the nascent Halleck tree, Millennia, in turn, dedicated herself entirely to him. Her devotion was absolute, a testament to the profound bond they shared. She became his blade, a fierce and unwavering protector, guarding him and the growing Halleck tree with unparalleled ferocity. Millennia's combat prowess, even in the early stages of her affliction, was legendary. She was a master swordswoman, her movements fluid and deadly, her resolve unyielding. Her role as Michaela's blade was not merely one of a bodyguard, it was a spiritual commitment, a vow to protect the one who sought to free her from her suffering. Her presence ensured that Michaela could continue his vital work undisturbed, shielded from any threats that might seek to impede his progress. The image of Millennia, the cursed blade, standing sentinel over the burgeoning Halleck tree, became a powerful symbol of their shared struggle and unwavering hope. In his relentless efforts to cure Millennia, Michaela undertook a delicate and dangerous task. He attempted to suppress the outer god of Rot's influence within her. This was not merely a physical treatment. It was a spiritual intervention, a direct challenge to the cosmic entity that had inflicted such suffering upon his sister. Michaela, utilizing his unique abilities and the protective properties of his unalloyed gold sought to sever the connection between millennia and the malevolent outer god. This was a monumental undertaking, fraught with peril, for to directly confront an outer god, even indirectly, was to invite unimaginable consequences. Yet Michaela, driven by love, persisted, believing that by weakening the outer god's hold, he could pave the way for millennia's eventual healing. This ongoing struggle within millennia's very being highlights the profound and intricate connection between physical ailments and cosmic influences in the lands between. As Michaela's efforts continued, the Halig tree began to flourish, its branches reaching ever skyward, its roots delving deep into the earth. And as it grew, so too did its reputation. Word spread throughout the lands between of a new sanctuary, a place where the outcast and the afflicted could find solace and hope. Those who had been rejected by the Golden Order, those burdened by curses, those seeking refuge from persecution, began to flock to the nascent Halig tree. Under Michaela's benevolent leadership, this growing community found not only shelter, but also a sense of belonging. The Halig tree became a beacon for the downtrodden, a testament to Michaela's vision of a more compassionate and inclusive world. It was a place where the stigma of curses was replaced by the promise of healing, where despair gave way to a burgeoning hope, all under the protective canopy of Michaela's unalloyed gold. This burgeoning community, united by their shared suffering and their faith in Michaela, represented a significant challenge to the established order, a nascent kingdom built on the principles of compassion and liberation. Following the birth of Marika and Radagon's children, a period of relative peace settled over the lands between, but beneath the surface, a dark conspiracy was brewing. We now arrive at a pivotal and truly devastating moment in the lands between's history. The Night of the Black Knives, an event that occurred in the pre-Shattering era, preceding the cataclysmic war that would forever change the world. This wasn't merely an assassination, but a meticulously planned act of defiance with far-reaching consequences, rooted in the very fabric of the Golden Order. At the heart of this tragedy lies the Rune of Death, also known as Destined Death. For eons, this potent aspect of the Elden Ring, representing the natural cycle of life and death, had been sealed away. Queen Marika, in her ambition to establish an eternal order, had entrusted its safekeeping to her shadow, Malekith, the Black Blade. Malekith, a formidable beastman of immense power and loyalty, had bound the Rune of Death within his own body, ensuring that no one could wield its power to truly kill those blessed by the Erd Tree. This act effectively removed true death from the world, allowing the demigods and many others to live indefinitely, a cornerstone of Marika's Golden Order. However, this artificial immortality, while seemingly a blessing, would ultimately prove to be a curse, setting the stage for the Night of the Black Knives. A shadowy conspiracy, the full scope of which remains debated even today, began to coalesce around the theft of a fragment of this sealed Rune of Death. While the exact motivations and participants of this initial stage are shrouded in mystery, all evidence points to Princess Rani, daughter of Radagon and Rennala, as the orchestrator. Rani, an Empyrean, was one of the chosen few who possessed the potential to succeed Marika as the vessel of the Elden Ring. However, Rani harbored a deep resentment towards the fate dictated by the Two Fingers, the silent envoys of the Greater Will. She viewed her destiny as a puppet of an outer god, a life without true freedom or self-determination. Her ambition was not to rule, but to escape this predetermined path, to forge a new age, an age of stars, where the influence of the greater will would be severed. To achieve this, she understood that she needed to die, but in a very specific way. To die in soul, but not in body, thus circumventing the two fingers' control and allowing her spirit to live on. To achieve her audacious goal, Rani took a drastic and irreversible step. She cast aside her great rune. Each of Marika's children, upon their birth, was granted a great rune, a powerful shard of the Elden Ring that imbued them with immense power and a direct connection to the greater will. By severing this connection, Rani renounced her claim to godhood, her destiny as an Empyrean, and her place within the Golden Order. This act was a profound declaration of independence, a rejection of the very system that had elevated her. It was a sacrifice, a burning of bridges that underscored the depth of her resolve. With her great rune abandoned, she was no longer bound by the strictures of the two fingers, but she also lost the divine protection that came with it, making her vulnerable, yet paradoxically, free to act. With the rune of death fragment now in her possession, Rani set her plan in motion. The fragment, though small, contained enough of destined death's power to bypass the immortality granted by the Erd Tree. This stolen power was then imbued into a specialized set of weapons, the Black Knives. These weren't ordinary blades. They were imbued with the very essence of true death, capable of killing a demigod's soul. The wielders of these lethal instruments were the Black Knife Assassins, a clandestine group of highly skilled killers. Under Rani's meticulous guidance, the Black Knife Assassins launched their devastating attack. Their target was Godwyn the Golden, Marika's firstborn son, a beloved demigod renowned for his valor and charisma. Godwyn was not just a symbol of the Golden Order's strength, he was also a potential successor to Marika, and his death would send shockwaves through the lands between. The assassins struck swiftly and silently, leaving no witnesses, only the chilling evidence of their deed. Godwyn was murdered, his soul extinguished by the power of the rune of death. But the Night of the Black Knives was not merely about Godwyn's demise. In a chilling parallel, on that very same night, Rani orchestrated the death of her own Empyrean flesh. While Godwyn's soul was killed, Rani's plan was more nuanced. She used the power of the Rune of Death to destroy her physical body, her Empyrean vessel, but carefully preserved her soul. This was the crucial distinction. By dying in body but not in soul, Rani effectively escaped the control of the two fingers. Her spirit, now free from its physical constraints, could inhabit a new artificial body, a doll, allowing her to pursue her own path, unhindered by the greater will's influence. This simultaneous act of death, one of soul and one of body, is represented by the two distinct curse marks found on Godwyn's body and Rani's discarded flesh, a testament to the precise application of destined death's power. The immediate aftermath of Godwyn's assassination was horrific. His soul died, extinguished by the Rune of Death, but his body, blessed by the Erd Tree's grace, continued to live on, albeit in a grotesque and corrupted state. This unnatural existence, a body without a soul, led to a horrifying phenomenon, the spread of those who live in death. Godwyn's soulless corpse became the progenitor of this blight, a spectral curse that would plague the lands between, infecting the catacombs and graveyards with undead abominations. These creatures, trapped between life and death, were a constant grim reminder of the Night of the Black Knives, a perversion of the natural order that Marika had so diligently sought to establish. Etched onto Godwin's soulless body, a horrifying testament to his fate, was the curse mark of death. This intricate swirling pattern, visible on his remains, signified not merely his death, but the specific manner of it, a death of the soul, a perversion of destined death. This mark solidified his tragic transformation, branding him as the Prince of Death, a chilling figure whose very existence defied the Golden Order and foreshadowed its eventual collapse. His sprawling, corrupted form would eventually grow into the roots of the Erd tree, a constant festering wound at the heart of the Golden Order. The revelation of the Black Knife assassin's true identity added another layer of profound betrayal to this already devastating event. These assassins were not mere mercenaries or misguided zealots. They were revealed to be new men women, a race of demigods, kin to Marika herself. The Numen, an ancient and mysterious people, were known for their affinity for shadows and their connection to the primordial crucible. The fact that Marika's own kin were involved in the assassination of her firstborn son was a betrayal of unimaginable proportions, a dagger plunged into the heart of her family and her reign. This revelation hinted at deeper factions and grievances within the Golden Order, suggesting that even within Marika's closest circles, dissent and ambition festered. The death of Godwin, her beloved firstborn, plunged Queen Marika into an abyss of grief and rage. The Golden Order, which she had painstakingly built and maintained, was now irrevocably fractured. Her son, the embodiment of her ideals, was gone, and his death was a direct affront to her eternal reign. In her despair, and perhaps in a fit of uncontrollable fury, Marika committed the ultimate act of defiance against the greater will. She shattered the Elden Ring. This cataclysmic event, known simply as the Shattering, tore the very fabric of reality, scattering its great runes across the lands between and unleashing unimaginable chaos. Her motivations were complex: grief, anger, a desire for vengeance against the forces that had taken her son, and perhaps even a desperate, misguided attempt to break free from the greater will's control herself. The shattering of the Elden Ring was not a calculated strategic move, but a visceral, emotional response to an unbearable loss. The shattering of the Elden Ring plunged the lands between into an era of unprecedented chaos and brutal warfare. The great runes, now fragmented, were claimed by Marika's remaining demigod children, each vying for power and control. This led to a devastating war, brother against brother, sister against sister, as the demigods turned their immense powers against each other in a desperate struggle for dominance. The once unified lands between became a fractured realm, ravaged by conflict, its people suffering under the endless cycle of violence. The Golden Order, once a beacon of stability, was now in ruins, its principles and ideals all but forgotten amidst the bloodshed. The very landscape was scarred by the clashes of demigods, leaving behind a land forever changed. The greater will, the enigmatic outer god that had guided Marika and established the Golden Order, was enraged by these events. The shattering of the Elden Ring, the murder of a demigod, and the subsequent war were all direct challenges to its authority and its meticulously crafted order. In a display of its immense power and displeasure, the greater will abandoned Marika and the lands between. Its golden grace, once a guiding light, receded, leaving the realm without its divine guidance. Marika herself was imprisoned within the Erd tree, crucified and left to languish, a prisoner of her own shattered ambition. The lands between, once a favored land, was now cast adrift, left to its own devices, a world without its benevolent or perhaps tyrannical god. And finally, Malekith, Marika's loyal shadow and the keeper of the Rune of Death, was left to mourn his catastrophic failure. He had sworn to protect destined death, to keep it sealed away, yet a fragment had been stolen under his very nose. The death of Godwyn and the subsequent chaos weighed heavily on his ancient soul. He retreated to the crumbling Farum Azula, a floating mausoleum beyond time, where he would forever guard the remnants of the Rune of Death, consumed by guilt and sorrow. His failure to protect the Rune of Death was not merely a personal one, but a cosmic one, leading to the unraveling of the very order he was sworn to uphold. He became a guardian of a broken promise, a sentinel of a lost age, forever haunted by the night of the Black Knives. This single devastating night, born from Rani's defiance and Marika's grief, irrevocably altered the course of history in the lands between, setting the stage for the epic struggle that would define the era to come. The Night of the Black Knives, a night of terror and sacrilege, set in motion a chain of events that would forever scar the lands between. In the immediate aftermath, during the cataclysmic period we now call the Shattering, Queen Marika the Eternal, the very deity who had once commanded the Golden Order, found herself consumed by a grief and rage so profound that it led her to an act of cosmic rebellion. Godwyn the Golden, her beloved firstborn, had been murdered, his soul extinguished while his body remained. This unprecedented defilement of a demigod, a being of divine essence, broke something fundamental within Marika. In her despair, and perhaps in a desperate attempt to sever the ties that bound her to a fate she could no longer bear, Marika shattered the Elden Ring itself. This was not merely the breaking of a physical object, but the sundering of the very concept of order in the lands between. The Elden Ring was the embodiment of the world's fundamental laws, the golden principles that governed life, death, and the very fabric of reality. Its destruction unleashed chaos, dismantling the established order and throwing the entire realm into disarray. Marika's cataclysmic act had immediate and far-reaching consequences. The Elden Ring, once a unified symbol of power, splintered into numerous fragments, each imbued with immense power. These fragments, known as Great Runes, were scattered across the lands between, seeking new hosts. Naturally, they found their way into the hands of Marika's many demigod children, each of whom, by virtue of their divine lineage, possessed a latent capacity to wield such power. Each demigod claimed a fragment of the Elden Ring's power, their bodies now radiating with a portion of its former glory. This sudden influx of power, coupled with the vacuum created by the Elden Ring's destruction and Marika's subsequent disappearance or imprisonment within the Erd Tree, ignited a fervent ambition within the demigods. They saw an opportunity, a chance to ascend to the mantle of Elden Lord, the sovereign ruler of the lands between, and to remake the world in their own image. This ambition, fueled by raw power and a thirst for dominance, inevitably led to conflict. The demigods, once a fractured but somewhat unified family under Marika's distant gaze, now turned on each other with brutal ferocity. They waged war, a devastating, protracted struggle for control of the Great Runes, and by extension, the shattered remnants of the Elden Ring itself. Each demigod believed themselves to be the rightful heir, the one destined to reforge the ring and claim the throne. This period of intense, widespread warfare became known as the Shattering, a name that perfectly encapsulated the broken state of both the world and its ruling family. The lands between, once a realm of golden prosperity under the Golden Order, was plunged into a dark age of bloodshed and devastation. Among these warring demigods was Godric the Grafted, one of Marika's weakest and arguably most pathetic offspring. Lacking the inherent strength or strategic genius of his more formidable siblings, Godric recognized his disadvantage. As the war escalated and the capital, Lendel, became a focal point of conflict, Godric, in a display of self preservation that bordered on cowardice, fled. He abandoned the royal capital and established himself in Limgrave, a region far from the immediate front lines of the grander conflicts. There, in his desperate pursuit of power, Godric resorted to grotesque and unspeakable acts. He began grafting the limbs of fallen warriors and even innocent civilians onto his own body, a macabre ritual intended to steal their strength and bolster his own meager power. This horrific practice earned him the moniker the Grafted and solidified his reputation as a cruel and desperate tyrant. His castle, Stormvale, became a fortress built on the suffering of others, a testament to his insatiable hunger for power. While Godric was busy with his gruesome experiments, two of the most powerful and celebrated demigods were preparing for a confrontation that would define the Shattering. These were Malenia, Blade of Miquella, the Empyrean warrior renowned for her unmatched swordsmanship and her devastating scarlet rot, and General Radon, Starscourge, the colossal warrior who had mastered gravity magic and held the very stars in place. Their impending clash was not just a battle for territory or great runes, but a conflict rooted in their respective loyalties and ambitions. Radon, in his immense power, had halted the movement of the celestial bodies, a feat of cosmic manipulation that had profound implications. This act, however, directly impeded the ambitions of Miquella, Malenia's beloved twin brother, who sought to achieve godhood and establish a new order free from the influence of the greater will. Radahun's static stars prevented Miquella's journey, making him an obstacle that Malenia, in her unwavering devotion to her brother, could not tolerate. Thus, Malenia, accompanied by her elite retinue of clean-wrought knights, began her arduous march to Caelid, the crimson-stained land that served as Radon's stronghold. Her mission was clear: to challenge Radon, to defeat him, and thereby to release the stars and allow Miquella to pursue his destiny. The journey itself was a testament to her resolve, traversing treacherous landscapes and facing down any who dared to impede her path. The anticipation of this titanic clash sent ripples of fear and excitement across the lands between, as even the other demigods recognized the immense power wielded by both combatants. When Malenia and Radon finally met on the blood-soaked plains of Caelid, their confrontation was nothing short of apocalyptic. The battle that ensued was a devastating spectacle, a clash of demigods that scarred the very landscape and claimed countless lives. Radon, a titan astride his loyal steed, Leonard, wielded his colossal blades with gravity magic, tearing through Malenia's forces and smashing the earth with each blow. Malenia, a whirlwind of scarlet and steel, danced through his attacks with unparalleled grace, her prosthetic arm a deadly extension of her will. The ground trembled, the sky burned, and the very air crackled with the raw power of their struggle. The conflict was so intense, so destructive, that it fundamentally altered the geography of Caelid, leaving behind craters, fissures, and perpetual aura of devastation. The sheer scale of their power meant that any who dared to witness or participate in this battle were inevitably consumed by its fury. As their brutal duel raged on, it became clear that neither demigod would easily yield. Radon, despite his immense strength, found himself unable to overcome Millennia's peerless skill and resilience. Millennia, in turn, struggled to land a decisive blow against the Star Scourge's formidable defenses and overwhelming power. In a moment of desperate necessity, as she teetered on the brink of defeat, Millennia made a devastating choice. She unleashed the Scarlet Rot, a devastating and highly contagious plague that had long afflicted her, upon Caelid. This was not a controlled release, but a desperate, all-consuming explosion of pestilence, a last resort born of her unwavering will to protect her brother's path. The Scarlet Rot, a virulent and insidious disease, erupted from her body, transforming her into a living weapon of mass destruction. The consequences of Millennia's desperate act were immediate and catastrophic. The Scarlet Rot consumed Caelid with terrifying speed, transforming the once vibrant land into a blighted, crimson wasteland. The very air became toxic, the ground festered with disease, and all living things within its reach were condemned to a slow, agonizing death. The Rot, a sentient and malevolent force, twisted and corrupted everything it touched, leaving behind a landscape of grotesque fungal growths and rotting corpses. Radon, caught in the epicenter of this horrific explosion, was afflicted with the full force of the plague. Though his divine constitution prevented his immediate demise, the Scarlet Rot slowly but inexorably consumed his mind, driving him to madness. His once brilliant strategic intellect was replaced by a primal, insatiable hunger, and he became a mindless beast, forever doomed to wander the blighted plains of Caelid, a shadow of his former glory. His purpose, to hold the stars, was now a hollow, instinctual act, devoid of its original meaning. Millennia, having unleashed such a devastating power, was herself severely weakened and rendered unconscious. The immense energy required to summon forth the full might of the Scarlet Rot had taken a heavy toll on her already fragile body. In her moment of vulnerability, her loyal knight, Finley, a clean-wrought knight of unwavering devotion, bravely carried her away from the ravaged battlefield. Finley, battling through the festering landscape and the remaining vestiges of Radon's forces, embarked on a perilous journey, carrying the unconscious Millennia all the way back to the Haligtree, the sanctuary Michaela had created for the downtrodden and the afflicted. This arduous return journey was a testament to the loyalty of the Cleanrot Knights and the enduring bond between Millennia and her followers. As these epic clashes unfolded, the broader lands between were plunged into an era of unprecedented chaos and destruction. The Demigods' War, now officially known as the Shattering, continued unabated, a relentless cycle of bloodshed and ambition. No corner of the realm was untouched by the conflict, as armies clashed, cities burned, and the very fabric of society unraveled. The golden age of Marika's reign was a distant memory, replaced by a brutal struggle for survival and dominance. The once proud Golden Order, the dominant power and the guiding principle of the lands between, crumbled under the weight of this internecine war. Its foundational principles, once upheld by the unified Elden Ring, were undone by its shattering and the ensuing conflict. The faith that had once bound the realm together was fractured, its institutions weakened, and its authority challenged by the raw power of the warring demigods. Amidst this widespread devastation, some demigods reacted to the shattering in their own unique ways. Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, once the beloved consort of Radagon and the powerful sorceress queen of the Carian royal family, retreated into the grand library of Raya Lucarian Academy. Grieving Radagon's departure to become Marika's second consort and his subsequent abandonment of her, Renala clutched his great rune, the amber shard of the Elden Ring he had left behind, as a melancholic memento. She became a reclusive figure, her power still immense, but her spirit broken, dedicating herself to the study of sorcery and the preservation of her past. Her academy, once a beacon of magical learning, became a fortress, isolated from the brutal realities of the outside world. Meanwhile, Morgott, the Omen King, one of Marika's shunned children, found himself in a paradoxical position. Despite being an outcast, an omen born with grotesque horns and despised by the Golden Order, Morgott remained fiercely loyal to the Erd Tree and the royal capital, Lindell. While his siblings tore each other apart in their pursuit of power, Morgott secretly defended the capital from their incursions. He fought tirelessly, often in disguise, to preserve the sanctity of the Erd Tree and the vestiges of the Golden Order, even though that very order had cast him out. His actions, driven by a deep-seated, if conflicted, loyalty, demonstrated a devotion to the lands between that far surpassed the selfish ambitions of his more celebrated siblings. He was the unsung protector, the hidden sentinel bearing the burden of his lineage while fighting for the very institutions that had condemned him. The Shattering, therefore, was not just a war of power, but a crucible that revealed the true nature, the hidden loyalties, and the desperate measures of each demigod. The cataclysmic events of the Shattering, the war that erupted after Marika shattered the Elden Ring, did not end in a swift victory for any single faction. Instead, as the dust settled across the ravaged lands between, a new, grim era dawned, the post-Shattering stalemate. This period, characterized by a prolonged and brutal deadlock, saw the surviving demigods retreat to their respective strongholds, clutching their fragments of the shattered Elden Ring, the great runes, like desperate children clinging to broken toys. Each great rune, a piece of the cosmic order, imbued its holder with immense, if often corrupting, power. Among these squabbling divine offspring, Godric the Grafted, the weakest and arguably most pathetic of Marika's direct descendants, found himself in a particularly precarious position. Lacking the martial prowess or inherent magical talent of his siblings, Godric, a descendant of Godfrey through Marika, possessed only a fraction of their strength. In the wake of the Shattering's initial chaos, he fled to Stormvale Castle, a formidable fortress located at the northern edge of Limgrave. There, driven by an insatiable hunger for power and a deep-seated inferiority complex, Godric began his grotesque practice of grafting. This horrific process involved severing the limbs of defeated warriors, both human and beast, and surgically attaching them to his own body. He believed that by accumulating the strength of others, he could overcome his inherent weakness and ascend to a position of true power, a delusion that fueled his increasingly monstrous appearance and behavior. His castle became a gruesome laboratory, its courtyards littered with the discarded remains of his victims, and the eerie sounds of his surgical experiments echoing through its ancient halls. While Godric indulged in his macabre pursuits, a far more significant and destructive confrontation was brewing in the desolate wastes of Kylet. Millennia, Blade of Miquella, the undefeated Empryon and twin sister to Miquella, embarked on a perilous journey to Kylet. Her objective was clear: to confront General Radon, the Star Scourge, another powerful demigod and son of Radagon and Renala. Radon, a colossal warrior who had single-handedly halted the movement of the stars, represented a significant threat to Miquella's plans, which Millennia was fiercely dedicated to. Their clash, which would become known as the Battle of Ionia, was the bloodiest and most devastating engagement of the entire Shattering. Millennia, wielding her signature scarlet rot, a horrific disease that consumed flesh and spirit alike, unleashed its full, devastating power upon Radon. The ensuing battle leveled vast swathes of Kylid, transforming its once vibrant landscapes into a crimson-hued wasteland, perpetually blighted by the rot. Though Millennia ultimately triumphed, inflicting the scarlet rot upon Radon, her victory came at a terrible cost. Radon, our once a proud and noble warrior, was driven utterly mad by the insidious disease. His mind shattered, he became a grotesque, mindless beast, endlessly reliving their epic duel on the plains of Caelid. He roamed the blighted lands, a shadow of his former self, his colossal frame a testament to the destructive power of the rot. His once loyal steed, Leonard, remained by his side, a poignant symbol of their unbreakable bond, even in madness. This tragic outcome left a gaping power vacuum in Caelid, allowing the rot to fester and spread, further corrupting the land and its inhabitants. Back in the heart of the lands between, Morgott, the Omen King, stood as the unwavering defender of Lendel, the royal capital. Morgott, a cursed omen, born with horns and a tail, had long been an outcast, hidden away from the Golden Order's pristine image. Yet despite his ostracization, his loyalty to the Erd Tree and the Golden Order remained absolute. He bore the heavy burden of protecting the capital from all challengers, including his own ambitious demigod siblings, who sought to claim the Elden Ring for themselves. His tireless vigilance and formidable combat skills ensured that Lendel, though battered by the Shattering, remained impregnable. He fought tirelessly, a tragic figure driven by a duty that few acknowledged and even fewer appreciated, his identity as Margit, the Fell Omen, a secret known only to a select few. Meanwhile, in the glistening spires of the Raya Lucarian Academy, Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, retreated into a profound state of grief and despair. Her beloved Radagon had abandoned her to become Marika's consort, and the shattering of the Elden Ring had only deepened her sorrow. She sequestered herself within the Grand Library, cradling the great rune of the Unborn, a powerful artifact that represented her mastery over reincarnation and her unyielding love for her children. Surrounded by countless tomes of arcane knowledge, she spent her days weeping, her mind consumed by memories of a love lost and a kingdom fractured. Her once formidable magical prowess, though still present, was now largely directed inward, a reflection of her broken spirit. Far to the west, in the fiery depths of Mount Gelmir, Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, embraced a path of radical defiance against the Greater Will, the enigmatic outer god that governed the Golden Order. Driven by a desire to overthrow the established order and reject the rigid doctrines of the Erd Tree, Rykard committed an act of unspeakable blasphemy. He willingly merged his essence with the god-devouring serpent, an ancient, primordial entity that resided within Volcano Manor. This grotesque union transformed Rykard into a monstrous, serpentine demigod, his human form subsumed by the colossal beast. From his volcanic lair, Rykard, now one with the serpent, sought to devour the very gods themselves, believing that only through such a radical act could true freedom from the Greater Will's oppressive influence be achieved. His followers, the Tarnished of Volcano Manor, were bound by a shared oath to hunt down and assassinate those who upheld the Golden Order, further solidifying his reputation as a formidable and terrifying force. In the shadows of the Haligtree, a colossal Sickly golden tree, Moog, lord of blood, another omen and half-brother to Marika, executed a sinister plot. He abducted Michaela, the Empyrean twin of Millennia, from his cocoon within the Haligtree. Michaela, eternally youthful and possessing the power to compel love, was in a deep slumber, attempting to cure Millennia of the scarlet rot and to establish his own unalloyed order, free from the imperfections of the Golden Order. Mog, however, harbored his own twisted ambitions. He sought to raise Michaela to full godhood, not for Michaela's own sake, but to become his consort and establish a new dynasty, the Mogwin dynasty, under the influence of the Formless Mother, an outer god of blood and sacrifice. He transported Michaela's comatose form to the Mogwin dynasty mausoleum, a hidden, blood-soaked sanctuary deep beneath the earth, where he tirelessly performed grotesque rituals, attempting to awaken and corrupt the young Empyrean. As the demigods squabbled and schemed, the fading light of the Erd Tree, once a beacon of hope and guidance, signaled a new chapter for the lands between. In this time of profound spiritual decay, the tarnished individuals who had once been exiled from the lands between and stripped of the Erd Tree's grace were inexplicably summoned back. The guidance of grace, a spectral golden light, now flickered before them, urging them toward the Erd Tree, hinting at a destiny intertwined with the shattered Elden Ring. These tarnished, once considered pariahs, now held the potential to become the Elden Lord, to mend the broken world, or to reshape it entirely. For these returning tarnished, a spectral sanctuary known as the Round Table Hold materialized. This ethereal haven, established by the enigmatic two fingers, colossal withered digits that served as conduits for the greater will, offered a safe space for the tarnished to gather, strategize, and prepare for their arduous journey. Within its timeless walls, they could consult with various figures, forge their weapons, and receive guidance, albeit often cryptic, on their quest to become Elden Lord. It was a place outside of time and space, a neutral ground in a land consumed by conflict. Among the many souls drawn to the lands between, Fia, the deathbed companion, pursued a deeply personal and subversive agenda. A mysterious woman who offered comfort to the tarnished, she secretly sought to birth a new age, an age of Duskborn, through the mending rune of the Death Prince. This rune, a fragment of the Elden Ring, was intrinsically linked to Godwyn the Golden, the first demigod to die, and his subsequent transformation into the Prince of Death. Fia believed that by embracing death, rather than repressing it as the Golden Order had, a more complete and harmonious order could be achieved, one that acknowledged the natural cycle of life and death. Her actions, though cloaked in intimacy, were a direct challenge to the very tenets of the Golden Order. In stark contrast to Fia's subtle machinations, the horrifying figure of the Dung Eater, the Loathsome, was imprisoned deep beneath Lanedell in the subterranean shunning grounds. This wretched being, a harbinger of defilement and despair, sought to curse all life in the lands between with his omen-inducing affliction. His philosophy was one of absolute corruption, a desire to spread his blight across every living soul, ensuring that all would suffer the same fate as the omens, forever outcast and despised. His presence, even in imprisonment, was a palpable source of dread, a testament to the depths of depravity that had taken root in the fractured world. Adding to the widespread suffering, the nomadic merchants, a peaceful and ancient people who had traversed the lands between for generations, found themselves relentlessly persecuted, accused of heresy, and reviled for their perceived connection to the frenzied flame, an outer god of destructive chaos they were driven underground, forced to seek refuge in the subterranean depths. Their eyes, a distinctive feature of their people, were cursed by the very frenzied flame they were accused of worshipping, burning with an internal, uncontrollable fire. Their tragic plight highlighted the growing intolerance and fear that gripped the lands between, as paranoia and superstition replaced reason and empathy. Ultimately, the post shattering stalemate was a period of profound instability and decay. The lands between, once a vibrant and prosperous realm, devolved into a fractured mosaic of warring factions, blighted landscapes, and desperate souls. No single demigod emerged victorious, and the conflict, far from resolving, simply festered. The Erd tree, once a symbol of divine order, continued to wither, its golden light fading while the guidance of grace, a desperate plea from a dying world, called out to the tarnished, offering a glimmer of hope in an otherwise desolate age. The stage was set for a new champion, or a new catastrophe, to finally break the agonizing stalemate and determine the fate of the lands between. From the lingering echoes of the shattering, a new age, or perhaps the continuation of an old prophecy, was set to unfold. Our timeline now brings us to the present day, the era of the Tarnished's quest. After centuries of dormancy, of existing as exiles cast out from the grace of the Erd tree, a new hope flickered into existence. The Tarnished, those who had once lost the golden light in their eyes, were now, for reasons yet fully understood, being called back to the lands between. This phenomenon wasn't random. It was a divine summons, a whisper of grace, guiding them across the fog-shrouded seas, beckoning them to a destiny long foretold. Upon their miraculous return, many tarnished found themselves awakening in the desolate, stranded graveyard, a place of forgotten beginnings and grim ends. Here, amidst the skeletal remains and ancient stones, a pivotal encounter awaited. A spectral figure, ethereal and enigmatic, materialized before them. Melina, the first maiden. She was a being of profound mystery, her eyes closed, her purpose veiled, yet her offer was crystal clear. Recognizing the Tarnished's lack of a maiden, a crucial companion for those seeking to become Elden Lord, she proposed an accord. In exchange for her guidance through the treacherous lands between, and the ability to transmute the runes acquired from defeated foes into strength, the Tarnished were tasked with a monumental undertaking: to gather the great runes, the shattered fragments of the Elden Ring, and ultimately to become the Elden Lord. This pact, forged in the liminal space of the stranded graveyard, marked the true beginning of the Tarnished's arduous journey, a path that would reshape the fate of the entire realm. With Melina as their cryptic guide and the weight of a shattered world on their shoulders, the Tarnished began their perilous traverse through Limgrave, the verdant yet dangerous starting region of the lands between. This land, once a peaceful domain, was now rife with dangers, from common soldiers driven mad by the shattering to monstrous creatures lurking in the shadows. Early in their journey, they encountered Gatekeeper Gostock, a sniveling, opportunistic individual who, despite his seemingly subservient role at Stormvale Castle, harbored a cruel streak, often attempting to pilfer runes from unsuspecting Tarnished. His presence served as an early warning of the moral decay that permeated the lands between. The true first major obstacle, however, presented itself at the very entrance to Stormvale Castle: Margit, the Fell Omen. This formidable foe, a creature of pure malice and shadow, served as a guardian, a spectral sentinel placed there by an unseen hand to test the worthiness of any who dared to approach the demigods. Margit's defeat was a testament to the Tarnished's burgeoning strength and resolve, a clear signal that their journey would be anything but easy. Having overcome Margit, the Tarnished proceeded to infiltrate Stormvale Castle, a sprawling, dilapidated fortress that once stood as a symbol of power and grandeur, now a testament to the ruin wrought by the shattering. This stronghold was the domain of Godric the Grafted, the very first demigod the Tarnished were destined to confront. Godric, a descendant of Godfrey and Marika, was a pathetic and grotesque figure, driven by an insatiable desire for power and a deep-seated inferiority complex. His method of achieving this power was horrific. He grafted the limbs of others, both human and beast, onto his own body, believing it would make him stronger. The castle itself was a labyrinth of horrors, filled with grafted scions, monstrous dogs, and the remnants of Godric's twisted experiments. The confrontation with Godric was a gruesome affair, a battle against a being who had sacrificed his humanity for a grotesque parody of strength. In a desperate final act, Godric attempted to graft the head of a dragon onto his arm, a horrifying display of his depravity and ambition. Despite this last-ditch effort, the Tarnished prevailed, claiming their first great rune, a tangible piece of the shattered Elden Ring, and a crucial step towards their ultimate goal. With Godric's great rune secured, the Tarnished ventured northward, crossing the treacherous path into Liurnia of the Lakes. This region presented a stark contrast to the war-torn Limgrave and the decaying Stormvale Castle. Liurnia, a vast, shimmering expanse of water and ancient ruins, was primarily controlled by the Carian royal family, a lineage of powerful sorcerers and astrologers. Here, amidst the serene yet mystical landscape, the Tarnished encountered Rani the Witch, a pivotal figure whose fate was intricately intertwined with the very fabric of the lands between. Rani, a lunar princess and a fiercely independent spirit, had renounced her Empyrean flesh and now existed as a doll, pursuing her own enigmatic destiny. Her connection to the stars and her complex familial ties to the Carian royal family would prove instrumental in the Tarnished's journey. The path through Liurnia inevitably led to the Raya Lucarian Academy, a prestigious institution of sorcery and the stronghold of Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. Renala, once a powerful sorceress and the beloved consort of Radagon, had been driven to madness by her grief after Radagon's departure. The Tarnished confronted her in the Grand Library, a chamber filled with the echoes of ancient magic. The battle against Renala was unique, a display of arcane power and maternal protectiveness. However, even in her madness, Renala was not entirely without grace. Upon her defeat, she was spared, her fragile state and Rani's intervention preventing her ultimate demise. This act of mercy, a deviation from the usual path of vanquishing demigods, hinted at the deeper complexities and moral ambiguities that permeated the lands between. Leaving the shimmering lakes of Liurnia, the Tarnished turned their gaze eastward towards the blighted, crimson-stained lands of Caelid. This region was a stark, horrifying testament to the destructive power of the Scarlet Rot, a devastating affliction that had ravaged the land and its inhabitants. Caelid was the domain of General Radon, the Star Scourge, one of the most fearsome and revered demigods, a warrior of immense strength and unwavering loyalty. Radon, a son of Radagon and Renala, had once been a proud and mighty general, a master of gravity magic, but he too had fallen victim to the Scarlet Rot, his mind and body slowly consumed by the insidious plague. He now roamed the Wailing Dunes, a grotesque shadow of his former self, his only companions, his beloved emaciated steed, Leonard, and the lingering echoes of his past glory. To challenge Radon was not merely to fight a demigod, but to participate in a grand, albeit tragic, event, the Radon Festival. This tradition, orchestrated by Jaren the Witch Hunter, was a desperate collective effort by the remaining warriors of the lands between to give Radon a warrior's death, to free him from the torment of the rot. The festival drew champions from across the realm, all eager to test their mettle against the mighty Star Scourge. The Tarnished joined this epic struggle, a chaotic, multifaceted battle against a demigod who, even in his madness, retained a terrifying degree of power. The defeat of Radon was a monumental achievement, freeing the stars that he had held captive with his gravity magic and granting the Tarnished another great rune, a symbol of their growing power and influence. With the great runes of Godric, Renala, though not fully claimed due to her unique circumstances, and Radon in their possession, the Tarnished continued their relentless quest, venturing into the deepest, darkest corners of the lands between. Their journey would lead them to confront the remaining demigods, each a unique and formidable challenge, each holding a piece of the shattered Elden Ring. In the volcanic depths of Mount Gelmir, they would face Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, a horrifying serpent god who had devoured his own followers, a true embodiment of heresy. His defeat would require the legendary Serpent Hunter Spear, a weapon specifically designed to combat his monstrous form. Then, in the golden-hued capital of Lendel, the Tarnished would encounter Morgott, the Omen King, a tragic figure who, despite being an omen, fiercely defended the Erd Tree and the Golden Order, a duty that ultimately led to his lonely demise. Deep beneath the capital, in the subterranean depths, lay Mog, Lord of Blood, a sinister demigod who sought to establish his own dynasty, a blood-soaked empire through the manipulation of the outer god, the Formless Mother, and the kidnapping of Miquella. His defeat would be a struggle against a being steeped in forbidden rituals and dark power. Finally, in the scarlet-blighted plains of the Haligtree, the Tarnished would face Millennia, Blade of Miquella, the undefeated Empyrean, a warrior of unparalleled skill and grace, yet cursed by the scarlet rot. Her battle would be a test of endurance and mastery, a dance with death against a demigod who had never known defeat. Each victory, each great rune claimed, brought the Tarnished closer to their ultimate destiny, to mend the shattered Elden Ring, and to determine the fate of the lands between. The path was fraught with peril, with moral dilemmas, and with the echoes of a glorious, yet tragic past. But the Tarnished, guided by grace and driven by an unseen force, pressed onward, their legend being forged with every step. Welcome back to the entire Every Elden Ring, Demigod Explained Timeline Explained. We now arrive at the present day, the era of the Tarnished's triumph, the culmination of millennia of strife, and the setting for your own journey through the lands between. This is where the ancient prophecies and the machinations of gods and demigods finally converge, triggered by the return of the Tarnished, you, the player. Our story, and indeed your story, begins not with a grand fanfare, but with a quiet awakening. You, an unchosen Tarnished, stir from a deep slumber within the desolate confines of the Chapel of Anticipation. This crumbling edifice, a relic of a bygone age, serves as your unwitting genesis. Your memory, like that of many Tarnished, is fragmented, a tapestry woven with threads of forgotten purpose and a lingering sense of duty. Immediately, you are greeted by an ethereal presence, a spectral finger maiden who whispers cryptic guidance, her words echoing the long held belief that the Elden Ring, shattered though it may be, still calls to those deemed worthy. Her presence is fleeting, a ghostly harbinger of the trials to come, yet her initial counsel sets the stage for the epic undertaking that lies before you. It is here, within these hallowed ruins, that you are meant to prove your nascent strength, to demonstrate that the spark of ambition, dormant for so long, still flickers within your breast. However, this initial test is far from a mere formality. Almost immediately, your path is obstructed by a formidable foe, the grafted scion. This grotesque creature, a twisted amalgamation of limbs and weaponry, is a stark and brutal introduction to the horrors that now infest the lands between. Its very existence is a testament to the depravity and ambition that has consumed the demigods, particularly Godric the Grafted, whose grotesque experiments in grafting have birthed such abominations. The battle is fierce, a desperate struggle for survival against an opponent far exceeding your initial capabilities. Despite your best efforts, the grafted scion proves too powerful, too overwhelming for an unseasoned tarnished. You are, by all appearances, defeated, your nascent journey seemingly cut short before it has truly begun. The cold embrace of death claims you, and you fall, seemingly into the endless void beneath the chapel, a tragic footnote in the grand tapestry of the lands between. Yet death in the lands between is not always an ending. It is more often than not a transition, a temporary setback for those blessed, or perhaps cursed, with the guidance of grace. And so, in a moment that defies conventional understanding, you are resurrected. Not back in the chapel of anticipation, but in the desolate, windswept expanse of Limgrave, a region scarred by the echoes of war and neglect. This miraculous return, facilitated by the lingering power of the Erd tree and the guidance of grace, marks the true beginning of your extraordinary journey. You are given a second chance, a fresh start, albeit one shrouded in mystery and danger. The land before you is vast and unforgiving, but within you, the embers of ambition have been rekindled, and with them, a singular purpose to become the Elden Lord, to mend the shattered Elden Ring, and to restore order to a world teetering on the brink of utter collapse. This is the mandate of the Tarnished, a destiny whispered by the very stars. Soon after your resurrection, as you begin to navigate the treacherous landscapes of Limgrave, you encounter a pivotal figure, Melina. This enigmatic young woman, with her closed eye and spectral presence, appears before you, offering a pact that will fundamentally reshape your destiny. She presents herself as a finger maiden, a vital guide for a tarnished seeking to become Elden Lord. In exchange for your assistance in reaching the Erd tree, the colossal golden tree that dominates the skyline of the lands between and is the source of all grace, she offers to serve as your maiden, bestowing upon you the power to transform runes, the very essence of life and experience, into strength. This is a critical exchange, for without a maiden, a tarnished cannot channel the power of runes, and thus cannot grow strong enough to challenge the demigods and claim the title of Elden Lord. Melina's guidance is not merely practical, it is spiritual, her knowledge of the lands between and its intricate lore proving invaluable as you embark on your arduous quest. She is your first true ally, a beacon of hope in a world consumed by despair. Your journey through Limgrave is not without its immediate challenges. At the very entrance to Stormvale Castle, the imposing fortress that guards the path to the legacy of Godric the Grafted, you are confronted by Margit, the Fell Omen. This formidable sentinel, a creature of immense power and malevolent intent, serves as a test of your resolve and nascent strength. Margit, a shadowy figure whose true allegiance and origins are shrouded in mystery, is a loyal guardian of the golden lineage, bound to protect the path to the Erd Tree from those deemed unworthy. His attacks are swift and brutal, a whirlwind of spectral weapons and dark magic, forcing you to hone your combat skills and learn the rhythms of battle in the lands between. Defeating Margit is a significant milestone, a testament to your growing prowess, and a clear indication that you are indeed a tarnished of considerable potential. His defeat opens the gates to Stormvale, granting you access to the first major legacy dungeon and the first demigod you are destined to confront. Within the decaying grandeur of Stormvale Castle, a place steeped in the grotesque legacy of its current lord, you finally confront Godric the Grafted. Godric, a descendant of Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and Marika, the Eternal Queen, is a demigod consumed by a desperate and horrifying ambition. Driven by a profound insecurity and a desire to emulate the strength of his ancestors, he has resorted to the abominable practice of grafting, surgically attaching the limbs and organs of defeated warriors and even innocent villagers onto his own body. His castle is a testament to his madness, a labyrinth of grafted horrors and tormented souls. The battle against Godric is a visceral and gruesome affair, a clash against a being who embodies the very corruption that has festered within the golden lineage. His desperation for power manifests in increasingly grotesque transformations, culminating in his grafting of a dragon's head onto his arm, allowing him to breathe fire in a desperate attempt to overcome you. Your victory over Godric is not just a personal triumph, but a symbolic one, as you acquire his great rune, a shard of the shattered Elden Ring. This is your first tangible step towards becoming Elden Lord, a piece of the divine power now within your grasp. With Godric's great rune in hand, your path leads you northward, away from the blighted lands of Limgrave, and into the serene, yet equally perilous region of Liurnia of the Lakes. This vast, watery expanse stands in stark contrast to the war-torn regions you have traversed thus far. Liurnia, unlike other areas, was largely untouched by the direct, devastating conflicts of the Shattering, preserving much of its natural beauty and arcane mystique. It is a land of ancient academies, shimmering lakes, and hidden secrets, a realm where magic and scholarship still hold sway. The primary power here is the Carian royal family, a lineage of sorcerers and astrologers whose influence predates the arrival of the Erd Tree in some respects. The tranquility of Liurnia, however, is deceptive, for beneath its placid surface lie powerful magic, ancient guardians, and the remnants of a once proud dynasty. Your journey through Liurnia inevitably leads you to the Grand Library of Raya Lucaria, the heart of the Carian royal family's power and the domain of Renala, Queen of the Full Moon. While Renala herself is not a demigod in the strictest sense, as she does not possess a great rune, her children certainly are, making her a crucial figure in the unfolding narrative. Renala, once a powerful sorceress and the beloved consort of Radagon of the Golden Order, before his mysterious return to Marika, now resides in a state of perpetual grief and delusion, cradling an amber egg, a gift from Radagon, which she believes holds the key to rebirth. Her power, though immense, is primarily magical, stemming from her mastery of lunar sorcery and her connection to the ancient Carian lineage. The encounter with Renala is unique, a battle not against a malevolent force, but against a sorrowful, broken queen. Her defeat, while necessary for your progress, is tinged with a melancholic understanding of her tragic circumstances. You do not acquire a great rune from her, but rather a powerful remembrance, a vestige of her immense magical power and the ability to respect your character, a reflection of her mastery over rebirth. As your collection of great runes begins to grow, the true path to becoming Elden Lord becomes clearer, thanks to the guidance you receive at the Round Table Hold. This ethereal sanctuary, accessible only through grace, serves as a gathering place for other tarnished and various figures of importance. It is here that you meet Anya, the venerable finger reader crone. Anya, with her ancient wisdom and connection to the two fingers, provides crucial exposition regarding the nature of the great runes and the arduous journey ahead. She reveals that in order to become Elden Lord, you must gather at least 2 great runes from the demigods, and then present yourself at the base of the Erd tree to rekindle the Elden Ring. Her pronouncements are not merely informative, they are prophetic, guiding your every step and solidifying your understanding of the cosmic stakes involved in your quest. The Round Table Hold becomes a vital hub, a place for respite, information, and the forging of your destiny. Following Ennia's counsel, your journey takes a dramatic turn, leading you eastward into the ravaged lands of Caelid. This region is a stark and horrifying testament to the devastating power of the Scarlet Rot, a virulent, sentient plague that has consumed the land, turning it into a crimson wasteland of decay and mutation. Caelid is the battleground where the legendary conflict between Radon, the Star Scourge, and Malenia, Blade of Miquella, reached its cataclysmic climax. The lingering effects of their duel, particularly Malenia's unleashing of the Scarlet Rot, have rendered Caelid a truly nightmarish landscape, teeming with grotesque creatures and the omnipresent threat of infection. The very air is thick with spores, and the ground is a festering wound, a constant reminder of the destructive power wielded by the demigods. Your passage through Caelid is a test of endurance and resilience, a grim prelude to the formidable challenge that awaits you. At the heart of this blighted land, amidst the scarlet dunes and rotting flora, you confront Star Scourge Radon, one of the most powerful and tragic figures in the lands between. Radon, a demigod of immense physical prowess and a master of gravity magic, is a son of Radagon and Renala. He was once a revered general, a proud warrior who held the very stars in place with his arcane power, preventing them from influencing the lands between. However, after his devastating duel with Malenia, he succumbed to the Scarlet Rot, losing his mind and becoming a monstrous, ravenous beast